when the money comes out, the claws come out.
Alex here with a Perspectives video on family court. Donna Wilburn, a licensed marriage and family therapist with Red Rock Counseling, is going to be interviewing family law attorney Lynn Hughes, who is running for Department M of the 8th Judicial District Court. In the meantime, let's get started.
Hi there. Thanks for coming in and talking to me. My name is Donna Wilburn. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist here in Las Vegas. I have worked in the forensic system with the court type cases, divorce cases for a long time. So what I wanted to do is get to know these judicial candidates a bit and talk to you about what you're bringing to the table and what you want to do if you are elected.
Okay.
So how about first, introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what position you're running for and what you think you can bring to the bench that is different than what we got on there or better or whatever.
Okay. Well, my name is Lynn Hughes. I've been an attorney here in town for 23 years.
Okay.
So I grew up in Las Vegas. We moved here when I was young enough to grade school and all the way through UNLV.
So you went to grade school, high school. Where'd you graduate?
Western High School.
Yeah.
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 My parents still live right over by that neighborhood. I went to UNLV, did my 4 years. Actually, took me a little longer than 4 years to go through there. And then because they didn't have the law school, I went away to law school. My wife grew up in Indiana, so we went out there.
Okay.
And immediately came back. I'm a desert rat. I love the desert, the dry air. I don't do well with humidity.
The sunshine.
So, yeah. So I love coming back to Las Vegas. Again, been 23 years in practice. I've raised my 4 kids here. I intend to stay here till I'm a dry old husk, I guess.
Yeah. How old are your children?
My youngest is a senior in high school.
So you're almost empty nesting right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm getting rid of her though. She
No?
wants to
You're gonna
stay and go to
forever?
UNLV.
Oh.
So I've got probably another 4 years
Okay.
that she's going to stick around and complete school, I hope. She's one of those smart girls, so I don't think that'll be a problem.
So that's your youngest?
Yes, and then I have one at Southern Utah University, which is actually where my wife graduated from. I have one up in Idaho at school, and another one who graduated UNLV and is now working up in Pleasant Grove, Provo, Utah area.
Okay.
He builds sets for shows like for
that's neat.
Las Vegas and Jamaica and all kinds of places.
Very neat, very neat. So when you say you've been practicing law, is there a certain kind of law you've been focusing on?
Well, when I started, it was whatever the job required. But when I went out on my own, I focused mostly on family, guardianship, and probates and estates. So that's really the areas I've been dealing with.
So how long ago was that?
2006, so
Okay.
14 years. I've been
So
doing
when you
it.
say family law, guardianship, and probate, and so I'm not an attorney, so what is guardianship and probate?
Okay, probate is when somebody passes away, their estate has to be handled one way or another. It is not good for somebody's house or their assets to sit and do nothing. Number one, the government doesn't get its tax share if it's sitting there. Number two, it can be taken, cheated, stolen, other things like that. 3, creditors of that individual don't get taken care of. So the probate system is set up to make sure that people's assets go where they're supposed to go to.
So does that involve working with their families? Do you get because family law and family court tends to have a lot of drama in it.
Yes.
So does probate have some of that in there?
There are a number of cases that get dramatic in probate court. When the money comes out, the claws come out a couple of times. I'd say about 1/4 of the cases you tend to get a lot of emotion involved.
Okay.
Especially if a family member has passed, that tends to bring out the emotions.
Right.
Same as family divorce court.
Right.
That emotion comes to the surface and kind of gets in the way of logical thinking.
Right.
So in probate, it's family members who feel they've been cheated or wronged, or that kind of stuff can come out. Most of the cases get handled fairly quietly though.
So what's guardianship?
Guardianship deals with there's 2 phases or 2 types. One is minors, children who for some reason don't have parents any longer, or their parents have passed away, something else may have happened, and nobody is there then in control of the child any longer.
Okay.
So guardianship is having somebody placed in charge of those children
Okay.
in order to make sure, number one, their estates, if they have any, are taken care of, and number two, that they are getting what they need physically, education, everything. Somebody, if possible, is just under the court's thumb to make sure the children are taken care of.
Right. So like looking at your qualifications to be on the bench in family court, it sounds like that also involves like families and children and maybe looking at what is in the best interest of a child or what the child needs, things like that.
Very much so. Yeah, it's a different phase of the same kind of things.
Yeah.
You know, what's in the best interest of the children, making sure that they are well cared for despite other issues out there.
So give me again, what department are you going in for?
I'm running for Department M, which is
Okay.
currently a guardianship court.
Oh, okay.
Judge
So
Potter.
is it turning into,
Well, after all of the people are elected, whatever it sorts out to be in January, they're going to mix up the courts.
okay,
We have 6 new family law departments, and so it can't stay the same.
okay,
There will be, I believe, 2 of the family courts. There will be 2 that are guardianship. There will be, I want to say, 6 that are going to be abuse and neglect.
okay,
I may have that number wrong.
okay,
And there will be at least 1 that is juvenile law.
okay.
There's probably another phase I'm missing here.
Like
But
numbers?
yeah,
You
so
do the
there's-
math right?
we're going to have 26 family law courts, but I think 8 to 10 of them are going to be something in family law, but not doing divorces, not doing adoptions, those kinds of things.
So do they do family cases and that special court thing, or they're just gonna be that special guardianship stuff?
Actually, the 2 guardianship courts will do a little bit of probate as well.
Okay,
And then there's 1 district court that does probate and guardianship. So the 3 of them
that's
together.
interesting. I didn't
mix
know
it
all
up.
that was involved in there. So if you're going up on the bench, you're working with not just divorce cases?
Correct. Yes.
Oh.
And the abuse neglect, you know, the foster care system
Uh-huh.
has several courts down there that they deal with. And they deal with the DA's office, who tries to make sure that those things are taken care of. CPS, Child Protective Services, is
Right.
down there making sure those kids are taken care of as best they can.
Right.
And then there's the delinquent system. So all of those things are part of family court. And
Oh, okay.
it gets to be hectic. So some of those judges, if you've been in family court, you may never see because you don't deal in those
Right.
areas.
Right. In fact, I didn't even know they existed because
Right.
I haven't been in there. So let's say, so as a mental health provider, I put this out there to the other providers to ask questions about, you know, what your background, your education, your learning. If you've been doing family law, you have the experience in working with family law, but what kind of education have you gotten regarding domestic violence and psychological and physical abuse, or pathogenic parenting and high conflict divorce cases? Can you give me some background on that?
Most of mine has come through just outright experience in dealing with the cases. I think like most family lawyers, we tend to come across a case that has required us to educate ourselves on those things.
So even that is education, but on a
Right.
case by case, as something comes across your path and then you have to educate yourself on it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then when that comes across, I start seeking out CLEs, education courses that will give me a little bit better help for the next time that comes up. Guardianship court, we talked about the minors, there's also an adult section
Okay.
that deals with individuals who cannot care for themselves. You may have heard over the last few years that guardianships nationwide have taken a big hit because of what happened here in Clark County.
Okay. Yep.
That system has been cleaned up, and I'm actually on the permanent guardianship commission with the state. The Supreme Court added me to that committee,
Okay.
and we're doing what we can to make sure that guardianship is cleaned up and taken care of so that individuals are not being taken improperly advantage of.
Is that experience, as you're looking at that and being on that commission, is that experience going to benefit with the divorce, high conflict divorce children and those kinds of cases? Can you use that?
Yes, and the reason I say that is when I'm dealing with that stuff, we are learning about the situations that require an individual to be under a guardianship. There are individuals who have severe mental health disorders, schizophrenia, other things like that, that tend to require special application of knowledge in order to make sure that they're taken care of. And usually what we're doing is we're attempting to get family members to come in who have lived with them or have dealt with them and get them to assist the person who needs that help, whether it be medication or just making sure that they are able to have their finances available for them to be taken care of. And so I have learned a lot about those particular severe mental health disorders. I was also a hearing master for the mental health commitment court.
All right, so you should have some familiarity with
Yes.
mental health and mental health providers. So as you're talking, and I work in high conflict divorce cases mainly and advocating for children in those kinds of situations. So as a mental health provider, I'm curious, when you're working with high conflict divorce or family law type cases, how would you know when to bring in a mental health provider, and what would you do with the information that you get from them? Just kind of overall.
Okay, that is a difficult thing to answer because it just is such a case-by-case thing. I find mental health, I am a layman as far as mental health goes. I know just enough probably to get in real trouble, if that makes sense. And from what I've seen, it's part science, part art. Each individual who may be diagnosed with the same type of thing like schizophrenia is going to present differently. And that can be difficult if you don't have the training to really get a hold of, to get a laid diagnosis of. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And-
But you're a layman, so you can't
Right.
get a diagnosis.
But these are the individuals that we end up either dealing with as a client that has to deal with these situations, or the opposing party. I have had recent cases where there have been things like depression, postpartum depression after a birth, that have affected an individual, and that manifests as really bad behavior. At least it did in this instance. It manifests as very bad behavior, and we were dealing with it as a result of the behavior rather than as a result of the condition.
Right.
And so we were trying to, what can we do to help? We need to have you, there was drug use involved, there was other things, and how do we solve the symptoms? And actually it was the judge who said, no, there's something underlying this that needs to be addressed, which was nice. And I think both sides were not happy with the result. But that's beyond, that's not really the issue. The issue was getting the situation solved in one way or another. We actually are still working on trying to get that situation solved, so I can't get into the details of it.
Right.
But it was an interesting, it took us months to figure out, because we are lay people, that
even look at
particular,
that.
we were looking at symptoms and focused on symptoms rather than seeing the underlying cause. And that has taught me a lot just in the last year and a half.
So how can you bring that lesson to the bench if you're elected?
That's going to be, I think, my key is to ask that question every time. Is this a manifestation of something else? Because it was more than just, the symptoms being drug use, things like that. It was also a refusal to deal with the situation. And that should have cued me in, being in the mental health court and having those little bits of experiences. I should have said, there's more here than is what being dealt with. And because it was ignored by the individual, that it didn't escalate the problem, it just kind of stayed a problem the entire
Right.
time.
And
but
prolonging that and
Exactly.
taking so long to get to that, to even looking at that, there's kids in there usually. So,
Exactly.
Their healing and resolution is also delayed also. So
Yes.
maybe looking at that sooner, it sounds like you learn to maybe pay attention, keep your eye, and keep that mental health topic. Don't just focus on the symptoms, that there could be something underlying there.
Yes, and I really got to figure out, I guess, what the percentage of an individual is that might deal with something like this. Because I deal with a lot of angry people in divorce law, and anger is a natural condition in divorce law. I mean, I can be the best attorney in the world, but my client's not going to be happy at the end of the day because I am helping destroy their lives.
Right. Thanks.
And so it's I deal with a lot of angry people, even if I can, assuage some of that. But anger is often a symptom of of those other conditions. And so there has to be, I have to see more than just the anger, because I deal with the anger all day long. So it's kind of, that part is
Or like
difficult to see.
what do they call it? It's a different presentation of anger. Even depression is related to anger. So getting the view or an assessment, or even talking or consulting with a mental health professional could give the whole crowd, the whole legal crowd, a few bits of information about, how to handle these kinds of things. So there's some hot topics in this field in my particular group of the high conflict divorce case therapists who work with that. We work with like alienation stuff and kids being triangulated and manipulated. So I'm curious what your view on this particular topic is. So there's a myth or word going around that if a child is 13, 14 years old, they can choose where to live and they have a say. And once they're that age, they can just make a custody decision. So what is your view of that?
No. No, I don't.
That's a no.
I really, I am not keen on youth putting in their 2 cents until they have reached the age of probably 14 and above. They really have to get up there. They don't have enough life experience to understand how decisions affect others, individuals, and things like that. They are center focused on themselves from infants up to 14.
Right.
It's when they get to be teenagers is not good at it either.
You've had some. You know what
Yes.
teenagers are like.
Yes. So, but they do begin to see that, I think at 14 and up, that other people's decisions obviously can affect their lives, and so their decisions can affect other lives. I don't mind input, I guess, from somebody that young, but in 14 years and up. But I can't believe that they would be allowed to make the decision. That is not, in my mind, an appropriate thing. When they're 16, 17, they have 18 months left before they are out from under the court's order. I'm a lot more lenient there. As a counsel, I'm a lot more lenient there because I feel that, okay, they've been experienced, both parents. They should be allowed to, adjust their time schedule, because often my daughter does not want to be anywhere near around my house.
Well, teens have friends. They have
Right.
friends.
They want to go do their thing
Right.
and not worry about that. But I tend to make that true for the normal custody visitation schedule rather than holidays or other things. Those are still going to, in my mind, still should be required. It still should be part of that child's life, even if they don't.
So that brings me to another hot topic out there that a lot of us are really, we feel like our hands are tied with certain things, where it's called visitation refusal. And they're just refusing. Just period, end of story, refusing. Now, I can understand, let's do an assessment to figure out why, let's get information. But let's say all that's been done and there's, no danger to the child. They're just refusing. But this enforcing custody orders, they're a minor, they're in a parent's care. The parents, I can't pull them in my car and make that happen. The kid's just refusing. This is I'm going to call it like a dilemma that happens in court a lot, is how do you enforce the custody order with a teen that's just refusing, not for, danger, safety reason, but just because they want to refuse it.
It gets interesting because the child can do it as a vindictive acting out, more than a lot of times I don't think they don't get along with that parent. It is that parent didn't buy me what I wanted, therefore I'm going to stay.
I've had a lot of, they took my phone away.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I refuse.
One parent is the disciplinarian, the other one is buying affection,
Right.
by allowing whatever behavior they want. And so at that point, if I'm forced to do homework and not allowed to talk on my phone, I don't want to go over there. But
Enforcing.
it's
How do you
the
enforce?
enforcing thing that gets to be rather drastic, because I don't really see the court being the police force to make those things happen. I would do whatever I could to, put them into counseling together, explain. I really don't want to drag the kid in and have the kid testify to the court. That's not kind of the point of it. The court, again, even if that happens, is not going to be able to drop the gavel and say, you will spend time with this parent.
They can say it.
Yeah, but
how
the judge is
can
not
you
going
enforce it?
the judge is not going to go take the kid over to the other parent's house and sit there. It just, they have their own lives too. So it does get a bit interesting, but the only thing I can think is to ensure that some type of counseling or something else is going on there that allows that to be addressed.
And there's research out there about the different ways to handle situations like that. Sometimes they have some kind of consequence for the custodial parent. Like, it's your responsibility to make sure your child follows the rules. So sometimes they have a consequence for that. But there's articles and research and stuff out there about that. So let's say looking forward, if you do get elected, our system is not perfect and we have a lot of things out there that aren't working so well. Is there any area that you think you would focus on and want to change?
The family law?
Yeah, or family court if you're on the bench. In the system.
The system can always be improved. The problem is understanding what changes you make and how they affect everything. I mean, for example, in the guardianship court worked for a lot of years on making sure that people were protected, but there were little loopholes that allowed certain individuals to work the system and take advantage. And so we had, I want to say, about 3 or 4 particular professionals who came in and got guardianships over individuals, sold their homes, took the money, and ran. And they did it systematically. It was something that they just set it up in their practice to do that kind of thing. And it really did take advantage. The guardianship courts have been addressing that. It has, over the last 4 years, has been corrected in a number of ways, and it's been wonderful. And so those type of situations are minimal now. I'm sure there are still some that are occurring, but they have corrected the majority of them. Family court is getting there with child support changes. The new child support rules are easier to deal with, are easier to understand even for a layman, unless you're bad at math, which
I am.
happens a lot. And it's more uniform, which I really like. It gives the judge some discretion, but it really is, it's a simple math thing. This is going to be the number. Let's deal with it. It's what it is. And that takes a lot of the anger, I guess, out of that as well, because it's not, you can't push the number up, you can't push the number down. It's the number, and therefore
it's not up for debate.
Yeah, it's one of those things that takes the debate out, takes the anger out of it, takes those things, it just makes it even and fair, and it's understandable. When I have a consultation about a divorce, they ask me, what is alimony going to be like? What is child support going to be like? How long does it take? And I can blanketly say, child support's going to be X. Here's the number. Can I reduce that because, I don't want to give my wife all that much money? Well, no, that's the number. So I love to take emotion out of it, but as much as you can in family court.
I wonder if there's a way to do that. You've already, said, child support is, but I don't know if there's a way to take emotion out of it, let's say regarding custody or the child's comfort with each parent or something.
I have a couple of different theories, I guess, about that. One is the amount of emotion you had going into the marriage, the amount of love and real passion, I guess, you get into it. When that turns, it's that same amount of passion, the opposite direction. And so there can be a lot of vitriol and other things like that. And somebody who's that passionate tends to hold on to it, and it gets difficult. Part of the system of family court is to not move fast. Does that make sense?
For people who have been pending divorce for years and years, I have noticed it doesn't move very fast.
That tends to let some of that emotion boil out of it, okay? When you file a complaint, served, I hate you, all that stuff happens, but the first hearing happens 6 weeks later, where you get to court, and then the court is saying, okay, and we have burned out that initial emotion. You're still angry, you're still bitter, but you don't
Simmer
walk in
down.
ready to punch somebody.
Right.
And that each stage tends to take that little bit of time. So much has to happen for each stage of the court hearing that it just takes out a lot of that emotion, that anger and vitriol. The other part of it is when you finally get a decision, that becomes the new normal. If you talk to somebody who's been divorced for more than 6 months, that's just what life is. It's easy, it's okay, I understand how it works now, and my life is adjusted. And so if I can get them through to 6 months after the decree, life becomes much more normal, much more routine and understandable. And yes, we have to adjust and work with each other, but it becomes life again. And so that's as part of my practice is, look, let's do this, we'll get to the end, life can get better.
So it sounds like if you're on the bench, you would want to get to the resolution. Like you want to really focus on, let's get the resolution rather than let this play on and on and on and on.
Yes, I like a court, one, that makes a decision, that is not hemming and hawing and waiting, and I'm going to delay and I'm going to look up this. There are situations where that's required. I don't have the information I need, so I will make the decision and get it to you in a week or something like that. But normally, I like the court to make a decision for a number of reasons. One, whether you win or lose, there's a decision. I can now plan what I need to do. I don't like the custody order that you've given me, but at least I know I can visit on these days, and if necessary, the child's being kept from me, I can have an escort that will allow me to take the children, or whatever. I like a decision that is made, and if, okay, I don't like the decision, can I appeal it? Can I do this? Can I do that? Can I have it reheard? And you are allowing the parties and the attorneys to actually do something. Even if it's just calm the client down and get them to relax.
Right.
Whereas if they're sitting and waiting.
It does, it's a little closure-ish.
Yes.
It gives at least some kind of closure.
There are cases going on down there that are on day 12 of trial that the family court doesn't give you 12 days in a row. It doesn't work.
Oh, right.
So the first day of trial, they'll do a half day, and then okay, let's schedule the next day of trial. And that's 2 months later. And so on day 12, we are now 18 months down the road from when you started.
Yes.
And that is not something that's workable. It just does not. It does not allow the parties to move on. It doesn't allow the system to work. So I really do believe in making the decision. Let's get it done. And if you run into those situations where it has to delay to a second date or something, that's got to happen as quick as possible too. So part of that is the judge managing the calendar and understanding the entire case, what issues need to be resolved and how do we get to them.
And from what it looks like, not being too nervous to make a decision. Like being okay with making a decision that somebody may not like.
Yes, you have to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I have been a small claims judge here, a traffic court judge here. I've served as a pro tem for hearing masters in guardianship and abuse neglect in the mental health court. And the one thing I've learned is make a decision and tell them there. Just get it done. It just makes life better for everybody, even if they don't like your decision. The judges are better. Their calendar moves forward. The attorney's calendar moves forward. The parties understand what's going on. That to me is the biggest thing a judge can do.
That's a good point, especially for those who have to pay and keep going to these trial days.
Exactly.
And the attorney has to be there. And I hear them, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars that, people don't have that kind of money for that.
Yeah, it should be, if you have a $20,000 divorce and it runs into $100,000, somebody's doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And it's usually the judge.
Oops. So as we kind of close up, if somebody wants to learn more about you, contact you, see what you're doing, what's your info?
My website is electlynnhughes.com. Pretty straightforward. I ran for judge once before, back in 2014. Missed by a little bit, but I'm there. I have been in town forever. My office number is 702-474-7007. and I'm available to answer questions, absolutely.
Willing to go out there and talk to the masses?
Yes, absolutely. I'm out there a lot right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, you are, and you did good coming in. So I just want to say thank you for coming in and talking to me and sharing your point of view, and we get to use that to help us be more informed when it's time to go out there and vote. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.